Okay, Emily, I presume we're online. Okay, so good morning. My name is John Dreazen. I'm the lay leader for the service at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. We are a kind and caring spiritual organization. We're Unitarian Universalists, which means we believe in many sources of our wisdom. We do not exclude ourselves to one source. We have no creed. The principal thing we like to believe in is that we respect the inherent worth and dignity of everybody, regardless of color, religious belief, gender identity, race, you name it. We believe you're welcome here because we believe that is what is right and intrinsic to the human nature. So we welcome you online or in person. Wherever you are, wherever you've come from, you will find a home with us. With that being said, do we have any announcements with regard to the fellowship? Please come up and use the microphone as you see fit.
Good morning. I'm Miranda, and I'm representing the membership committee this morning. I just want to let people know that we would like to plan to have a what's called a UU1 class sometime in February, and anyone that's interested in attending should contact me or one of the membership committee members. Kay is one, she's by the door, and Monica is one, and I don't think Linda Pele is here today, right? She's not. And the UU 101 class is just a quick sort of history of who Unitarian Universalists are, who they were, with their origins, where the thoughts came from that Unitarian Universalists embrace. And so, you know, parallel to that, I have in my hand what's called a path to membership. And the path to membership is for anyone that's interested in membership. These are the things that need to happen before you can sign the book. And it says right at the top, attend a membership class. So they used to be held by the minister, but the minister's retired. So I learned from the ministers. I actually took the structure of their class and did some research, and we've put it all together for you. So contact us if you want to attend, and we'll set up a Sunday, probably a Sunday after service. And you can also tell that we're membership committee members because you'll see this little sign. So on our tags and on our meetings, if we remember them. So anyway, join us. Let us know if you want to come.
Hi, Monica. We're starting a women's group, and if anyone's interested, let us know. And we have a bunch of people that want to do it, so we're gonna probably start maybe in February. So let us know. Kim or Sue, let them know.
Good morning, I'm Ruby, and I wanted to let you all know that we are starting a new group this week called Discussion and Donuts for children 5th grade and up. And so we'll be spinning off the slightly older kids to do some fun things during service. So thank you all for your advice and your input and your support. And I'm very excited to start this new chapter with our fellowship's youth. So, thank you.
John, the keeper of the mic. I'm Mary, and I made an announcement last week that we're shy a few hymnals. I think I've gotten a couple back or been told, oh, I have one at home. So as long, we need them accounted for, and if you've got one at home, please bring it back so that when we get a nice full gathering on Sunday mornings, we have one for everybody. And then the other thing is, I had a table back there where Kim and I cleaned up the other day, and there's some stuff on it a lot of things went home last week or got claimed by people, but there's a little more to be claimed. So if it's on the table and you like it, you don't have to say, can I take this? You just take it. And the other thing is the big plastic bin up there, that's lost and found, so you can rummage through that and see if there's anything that you forgot here. And that you forgot because it's in the bin.
Hi, I'm Linda. I have two announcements. The first of which is I'm hoping I can grab board members and Kay for about no more than 10 minutes after the service. There is an opportunity for a long-term rental that I need to kind of run by you because I want to move on this quickly, and I just want to get input regarding some of the concessions I'd like to make to this renter because I think this person would be really good to have for us. The second is, I'm not sure how many of you get communications from the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association. They are, for the General Assembly in this June, they are looking to basically change our 7 principles. If you are not aware of that, I got an email that I will have either Kay or Erica forward out to everybody that's on the email distribution list, so you are aware of what they are looking to do. All right? Thank you.
And for those who are newer, a side comment, we are a democratically run organization, so the reason you will want to know about it is I believe we get a delegate. I believe we qualify for a delegate, 2 delegates to go to the convention to actually make the vote. So this information is not trivial. You'll get to look at it and feedback to our representatives who will actually represent us at the conference, which is how we run. We're a democratically run organization. I think we should know why you all need to know that. Okay, by the way, just a quick comment. If someone can get Albert maybe his cup of coffee, I'm sure he would appreciate that. And any latecomers, please feel free to move into the body of the sanctuary if you wish. Don't be shy. The camera is up pretty high, so unless you're about 7 feet tall, your head's not going to hit it. Okay, so as we do, the chimes will signal that time where we go from the secular to the more spiritual. I ask you to turn off phones and things that make noise so we have as much peace and sanctity as possible. So this is not a, this is not a morbid service, but it is about death. And my readings will all focus around that subject. We're going to have, I kind of pass this by, but that's the nature of age. So if somebody can light the chalice, Mary's been nice enough to light the basic flame to make the next piece easier. And I have an eclectic bunch of readings here. This is by Robert Louis Stevenson. It was written 14 years before his death, but it is inscribed on his gravestone, and it's apparently a very popular reading at funerals. I got my readings, by the way, by going onto a funeral home site and looking at both religious and non-religious readings. I said, where better to find things to read for the service? And you'll recognize, I think, the last line of this, what is called his requiem. Under the wide and starry sky, dig the grave and let me die. Glad did I live and gladly die, and I laid me down with a will. This be the verse you grave for me. Here lies where he longed to be. Home as a sailor, home from the sea, and the hunter home from the hill. Robert Louis Stevenson. My next reading, is from a lady named Mary Elizabeth Fry, and these are kind of in sequence. There's going to be a little bit of a pause here, but I thought there were so many good readings I just couldn't eliminate them all. And her title is Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep. And it's just a reading that focuses on the grief and the people left behind, who were the ones who suffer, we believe, not the one in the grave. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow, I am the diamond glints in snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain, I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush. Of quiet birds in circled flight, I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there, I did not die. Okay, so moving on from that, a little bit morbid, we have our opening hymn, which is number 101, Abide With Me. I've used it in a previous service, and I think it's a lovely, lovely hymn in any circumstance. So please stand as you are willing and able. Great hymnal for those who don't have one. Okay, and now we'll turn things over, I presume, to Ruby for a time for all, or a story for all ages. I know probably the story will not be morbid. I wanted not to be the one to do this. I felt that that was not going to be very helpful to our young folks. Oh, grab yourself a blanket if you want to. The floor is a bit chilly.
Hi everyone, I'm Miss Ruby, and I have a story for all ages. And our story is called Now. Now. There we go. This is my favorite breeze. This is my favorite leaf. This is my favorite hole. This one. Because it's the one that I'm digging right now. This is my favorite cloud because it's the one I am watching. This is my favorite tree because it's the one where I am swinging. This is my favorite smell. This is my favorite bird. And this is my favorite song because it's the one that I am singing. This is my favorite gulp. It's like grape Kool-Aid or something. This is my favorite bite. And this is my favorite tooth. This one right here. Because it's the one that I am missing right now. This is my favorite hug. And this is my favorite moon. And this is my favorite now. Because it's the one I am having. With you.
Aww.
The end.
Okay, so we can now sing our children out to their class. As I've said before, it gladdens my heart to see a lot of kids up here because they are our future in this faith, and we thank Miss Ruby for her work, and obviously she does something that attracts them to come in and be with us. Tell their parents, I want to go on Sunday and not stay home. All right, I have two more readings. As I said, we take from many sources. We do not disparage the Bible. So my next two readings are respectively from the Old Testament and the New Testament. I think they will be familiar to people from their past upbringing. The first is John 14, verses 1 to 3. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. And the second part of the very well-known reading from Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 to 4. This is the first part of it. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. So we now will pass our baskets, obviously, like any institution, unlike the Hebraic story of manna from heaven, money doesn't quite float down that way. So it has to come from our pockets or from our online contributions. So I'll pass the baskets. Feel free to donate as you feel comfortable to do so. All right, thank you, Carly, for that rendition. I'm sure it's not easy to play. I'm not a pianist. I'm suspecting it does twitch the fingers a little bit to do that. I'm thrilled and pleased to have back someone who has given us a couple of sermons in the past, a friend of long duration, Reverend Cheryl Meinschein, who is a retired or semi-retired Lutheran minister. I'm not sure if he ever retired from ministry entirely. Reverend Cheryl has several attributes, but one of the most important, she told me, is that when she was taught to give sermons, she was taught to keep them to 10 to 15 minutes. And her reason is because that's the interval between commercials, and is about apparently the ability of the human brain today to absorb. And so that is one of the great attributes for which we thank her. She does have to leave to another engagement right after this, so she will not be able to stay long to speak to all of us as she's often done in the past. So I'll begin as a physician that I am, and we'll turn it over to her. I'll do a little bit of the medical stuff first. So there are two terms for what is going to be discussed. One is NDE, near-death experiences, and the other one has to do with kind of going to sleep and waking back up again, and that is going to be the other half of this. We all know, we've all heard the stories about people who have near-death experiences. They universally and cross-culturally have this experience of going off into a very white area, haze, that's very pleasant, and people often don't want to come back, and they get sucked back into their life that we live today, whether they want to or not. Why that happens is mysterious. We do know that the white part of your brain, which is the new part, thus called neocortex, requires a huge amount of energy compared to the old cortex, the paleocortex, which is in all primitive animals. So it's very high energy. So we believe that part, probably proven, lacks blood first and kind of begins to go to sleep. But the inner part of the brain is sustained longer. Thus, people are able to live longer, but only with the primitive part of the brain. What they remember may be due to things in their past, but as Reverend Cheryl will tell us, all cultures have the same experience, so it's something that transcends culture, it seems. I read something which baffled me, but there was an EEG study, several of them done on people who happened to be hooked up at the moment that this occurred. And I read about it, and I can't tell you much because there was so much alpha, beta, gamma, delta, this wave, that wave, and the other wave, that I couldn't tell exactly what it was telling me. But we do know that the brain, even after apparent death, from which you come back, continues to be active. It continues to be electrically functional, which is kind of why we revive, minus maybe a couple of neurons, but we seem to come back regardless and be able to function. So that's kind of my brief scientific blurb. I will now turn the pulpit over to Cheryl for the spiritual part of it.
Good morning. Good morning, Cheryl. It's good to be back. Just Bethany. Oh. Bethany with you. All right. People's attention span, especially post-COVID, has gone down. So the 10 to 15 minutes is probably an overestimate of what folks can do. To speak, when I originally started here, I was told to keep it to about 20 minutes, which is a long time for me. So anytime you want me to cut that down, just let me know. So, when people find out I'm a retired pastor, the conversation often goes one of two ways. One is the question of why God allows bad things to happen to good people, often having to do with young people and cancer or a sudden fatal accident. The other is a question about what I think happens to people when they die. And the curious thing to me is that the question of life after death fascinates people, both religious, however you define that, and not. Maybe it's a question of ego, that we just can't bear to think that death is really the end of us. But whatever, folks are fascinated by the topic. Now, many religions believe in some kind of afterlife, whether it's resurrection or reincarnation, or just an extended life in some kind of wonderful place or a horrible place if you were a horrible person. In the interests of, although no one thinks they go there, in the interests of full disclosure, I believe in some kind of afterlife in the presence of God and with familiar beings who are recognizable to me somehow. I believe it happens at the time of death, not waiting for some last day kind of occurrence. And the closest I can come to describing it is as a Thanksgiving dinner with all family members being on the same page, which doesn't happen too often. I'm not too sure about guardian angels, and I don't believe in hell if there is one. I don't think there are very many people there given God's love and grace. I have no scientific proof for any of this. It's just what I believe. So this morning I'm going to be speaking about a topic that's become very familiar, very popular, near-death experiences, abbreviated as NDEs, and some of the scientific and other thought about what may be behind them. If you're interested in science and ghosts or mediums, those are topics for another day, and I'd recommend the book Spook by Mary Roach. But on to near-death experiences. A near-death experience is defined as a profound personal experience associated with death or impending death, which researchers claim share similar characteristics. Dr. Kenneth Ring is an American psychologist and the co-founder and past president of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Yes, there is such a thing. And he subdivided NDEs on a 5-stage continuum. The subdivisions were a feeling of peace, separation from the body, entering darkness, seeing the light, and entering another realm of existence through the light. Negative experiences, or NDEs, have also been reported, including sensations of anguish, distress, a void, devastation, and vast emptiness. People often report seeing hellish places and things like their own version of the devil, whatever they think that may look like. In the US, an estimated 9 million people have reported an NDE, according to a 2011 study in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences. And most of these near-death experiences result from serious injury that affects either the body or the brain. It turns out that NDEs have a long history. The oldest known medical report of one comes from Pierre-Jean de Monchaux, an 18th century French medic who described one in his book. And he thought that there was an influx of blood in the brain that stimulated a strong feeling in the individual, causing a near-death experience. In the 19th century, a few studies moved beyond one individual case. One was privately done by the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons, which I found interesting. And one was done in Switzerland. Up to 2005, 95% of world cultures are known to have made some mention of near-death experiences. One researcher of near-death experiences, Dr. Greg Shushan, published an analysis of afterlife beliefs of 5 ancient civilizations and compared them to modern-day ones. He found similarities across time, place, and culture that could not be explained by coincidence. He also found, though, that there were some experiences that were particular to cultures. So he concluded there's some kind of interweaving before the two. Dr. Sam Parnia, who's an associate professor of medicine at the NYU Langone Medical Center, also believes near-death experiences are influenced by religious, social, and cultural backgrounds. However, the core elements go beyond the borders and can be considered universal. He also found some studies with children where there were similarities, while children were playing and communicating using children's language. In other words, these similarities would have happened at an early enough age where the children really weren't aware or accustomed to cultural effects. So these similarities, who knows where they come from. Now, although I suspect NDEs have been talked about for a while, the first one I read about was in a book called Heaven is for Real, which was also a movie. It was the 2010 story of a 3-year-old boy named Colton Bumpo who had had an emergency appendectomy. And months after surviving, he shared the story with his family of how he left his body during surgery and went to heaven. And he described people and events that would have been impossible for him to know about otherwise. such as an unborn sister miscarried by his mother in 1988, and details of a great-grandfather who had died 30 years before he was born. Another bestseller, and one that I thought was especially interesting, is called Proof of Heaven, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife, which is an autobiography written in 2012 by Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon. In the fall of 2008, he contracted a very rare case of bacterial meningitis and spent 7 days in a coma. And during that time, he had visions or experiences that gave him reason to believe in consciousness after death. And it affected his life in many ways going forward. Now, other neuroscientists and neurologists have offered medical explanations for what they perceive that he is having were hallucinations rather than a supernatural experience, but Dr. Alexander would disagree with that. So there's no doubt that near-death experiences happen. The question is why, or maybe how. And there are three main types of theories about how that happens. One is spiritual theories, two is psychological theories, and three is the physiological or medical theories. Spiritual theories are summarized by saying that near-death experiences are like other experiences. And in this case, the NDE would represent evidence of a soul or some kind of mind which would leave the body upon death or close to death. And the NDE would then provide information about what the world looks like, where the soul goes afterwards, and then returns to Earth to report the experience. So that would be a more theological perspective. There are a couple different psychological perspectives for near-death experiences. And most of them have to do with the thought that upon approaching the trauma of death or near death, the brain kind of shuts down or doesn't want to deal with those unpleasant memories, so it dissociates into a path where memories are more pleasant or more hopeful. Now, one of the theories like this that really intrigued me was called the birth model, which suggests that death experiences could be a form of reliving the trauma of birth. That since a baby moves from darkness to light and is greeted by light and love and warmth, the same kind of thing is repeated then at death. The dying brain could be recreating that same passageway. Reports about leaving the body through a tunnel during a near-death experience is often reported among subjects who are born either by cesarean or by natural birth. I thought that was kind of curious. For the sake of those who don't speak medical, I'm going to way simplify the remaining possible medical explanations for near-death experiences, and if you want more detail about that, talk to John. First, there are the possible causes related to brain damage in one of the parts of the brain. There are two neuroscientists who proposed two ways of thinking about this. One type of NDE was due to damage in the right hemisphere of the brain, and these resulted in out-of-body experiences, also known as OBEs, as you read the literature, an altered sense of time, and sensations of flying or lightness. The second type of NDEs are due to damage in the other half, the other hemisphere of the brain, and these are characterized by the feeling of a presence, meeting and communication with spirits, seeing glowing bodies, as well as hearing voices, sounds, and music. So that's due to damage in brain structure. The second main category is not so much about damage to structure, but in brain chemistry, what goes on chemically in the brain that might cause an NDE. This is the theory that NDEs are caused either by chemicals administered from outside the body, like going through anesthesia, or chemicals that are produced naturally by the body internally, like neurotransmitters, endorphins, or serotonin. For me, the most interesting study in this medical category had to do with the 1997 study comparing NDEs and the loss of consciousness due to G-forces in fighter pilots. Think Top Gun, Maverick, and Tom Cruise. These episodes were caused when fighter pilots experienced really fast and intense acceleration that caused a lack of blood supply to the brain, decrease in oxygen. In almost 1,000 cases, the experiences often involved, and I quote, tunnel vision and bright lights, floating sensations, automatic movement, out-of-body experiences, not wanting to be disturbed, paralysis, dreams of beautiful places, pleasurable sensations, psychological alterations of euphoria and dissociation, inclusion of friends and family, inclusion of prior memories and thoughts, the experience of being very memorable when it can be remembered, and a strong urge to understand the experience. Interesting. The last article I read was the one mentioned by John called Lucid Dying EEG Backs Near-Death Experience During CPR. The study was done by Dr. Sam Parnia, who I mentioned before, and in his study, they incorporated audiovisual testing of awareness with continuous real-time EEGs and monitoring brain oxygen levels during CPR. He took cardiac-related arrests in hospital, and there were 28 who survived, and of those 28, 11 reported unique lucid experiences during resuscitation. These experiences included a perception of separation from the body, observing events without pain or distress, and an awareness and meaningful evaluation, including of their actions, intentions, and thoughts toward others. And what's fascinating, this doctor continued, was that despite low oxygen levels in the brain, near normal EEGs, measures of brain function, consistent with consciousness, emerged for as long as 35 to 60 minutes into CPR. And some of these brain waves normally occur when people are conscious and performing higher mental functions, including thinking, memory retrieval, and conscious perception. So Parnia continues, the biological discoveries around death and the period thereafter are completely different to what we've thought about. That we perceive of death as being the end, but actually what we're finding is that brain cells don't just turn off immediately, which makes sense. They die very slowly over many hours of time, and this extra time could give room for near-death experiences, which then are remembered as the person is resuscitated. Another doctor commented that the observation that during cardiac arrest and CPR, the brainwaves are still normal for up to an hour is pretty remarkable. And this kind of research tries to bridge the objective EEG recordings with the subjective description you get from the patient. But it's hard to know when conscious perception stops, which is one of the reasons why people have always told me that be careful what you say next to a person who's comatose or who you think is near death, because there's some question as to how long their hearing and perception lasts, and that hearing, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, is one of the last senses to go. So there you have it. In my experience, in my opinion, NDEs certainly exist. Are they proof of life after death or accurate descriptions of what that life looks like? I will give you the answer that I've been using more and more in many different situations. I doubt it, but what do I know? There's always something out there that I don't know. If you would like to do some more reading about this topic for this morning, check out Spook by Mary Roach, who has written all kinds of interesting stuff about biological processes. And the Wikipedia article on near-death experiences gives more information, especially footnotes on the biological causes for NDEs. Or you can check out, I found this in the library the other day where I volunteered, the Big Book of Near-Death Experiences, the ultimate guide to what happens when we die. It makes me chuckle. Well, never mind. I want to be respectful. But there are certainly folks who are very conversant on this topic. This book cites a lot of cases, but also covers topics such as integrating near-death experiences for adults and children. Because especially when folks who report these kinds of experiences report them and then are teased or not taken seriously, that can cause other issues. It also talks about near-death experiences for those who have attempted suicide. So if you're curious, There's that. So that's what I've got. It's interesting to think about, and we shall see. Thank you. Let's see, do we do the question and answer now?
Yeah, whether it's in our order of service or not, I would propose to maybe eliminate the last sermon, walk around with the mic. I think this is the kind of topic, excuse me, sorry, Mary. There we go. This is the kind of topic which I think we can respond to as, thinking people. I'll give you the first few thoughts I have. Number one, think about a pilot going at Mach 1 or 2 who's having unconscious spells. A little scary. And they wear either G-suits on the bottom legs to keep the blood from going downhill, or they do what's called grunting. They kind of do a Valsalva to keep the blood up in their brain. So it sounds kind of grim, but they do have techniques so they don't end up being unconscious with a very expensive piece of our equipment flying at very high speed. The second is, as Reverend Cheryl said, is a term I was having a mental block on for NDEs, is lucid death, which is probably a more descriptive terminology about people who are still doing something. The third is that, as Universalists, of course, we don't believe in hell, so you kind of mentioned that, but that is the other half of our faith, that, Universalists, that was their belief. No one goes to hell because no living, loving God could do that to people. And the final comment is anesthesia is a conundrum. To this day, there are a lot of mysteries about what we're doing to people when we put them to sleep. Where are those drugs going? Where in the brain are they working that makes us become unconscious and oblivious when we're doing stuff? You've all heard of propofol, which did in Michael Jackson. We call it milk of amnesia because we believe that it causes amnesia, not anesthesia, but does it make a difference? If you can't remember, what difference does it make? So I would point out that in a sense, anesthesia is a form of kind of lucid death or the like. We kind of put you out for a while, but hopefully don't kill you at the same time. Think of the days of ether, not too far past. So I'm going to grab the mic. If anybody feels that they wish to contribute something that has been stimulated by this conversation, please raise your hand. If not, we'll move on. But if you do, I'll be happy to run the mic around. Okay, Mary has some thoughts. Battery's on red, but it's still working.
At least for the moment.
Yes.
During this, I was thinking my father had pancreatic cancer, and when he went in for surgery, anyway, I won't give you that whole long story, but he told my mother after he came out, and I don't know if it was the anesthesia, who knows, but he said when he came that he saw himself on the table, that he separated from himself. He didn't see anybody else, didn't see the surgeons, but he saw himself on the table and everything was white all around him. And I don't remember what she said, how he felt about it, but this one thing the surgeon told us when he was in there for hours, he was in for 6 or 8 hours. We were like, oh my God, and the surgeon told us, well, he's past this point now, but about 25% of the patients that go in for this surgery don't come out. So I don't know, but it was fascinating that he saw it, and he said, I wasn't here.
Yeah, there are two things. There were interesting studies done where they put a laptop facing up toward the top of the room. So if folks had out-of-body experiences, maybe they could see the image that was on the laptop and report it back down.
Laptops didn't exist.
Well, they're doing them now.
They're doing them now, yeah.
And no one to this point has come back and accurately reported the image on the laptop, but maybe they didn't go to who knows. The other thing that I've heard people report numerous times who are near death, or at least within a week or so, is they often see people up, familiar people who have died. They see them and talk to them. So.
Anybody else? If not, we will move on. And we can talk more over the subject at coffee hour. I thought I lost it for a second. Okay, such as St. Transit Gloria, so goes the rain. It is called benign senescent forgetfulness, by the way, which is a nice term for the aging brain. You don't have Alzheimer's. Okay, thank you. So as advertised, I know we get kind of twitchy as we get near the end of the service, and I think we'll just kind of pass on the hymn unless there's a strong yen for it. And if someone would be so nice as to extinguish our chalice and turn off the flames there. And we don't have our normal reading in here for extinguishing the chalice, but I will just ad lib that the fact that our chalice light is being turned off at this time does not indicate that the light within our hearts and souls has been turned off. We will take that with us as we leave this friendly environment. May it burn brightly in your hearts and souls until we meet again. I have some closing words here. This will go on to Joyce Grenfell. Sorry? Sorry? That comes after this. Yep, I've not forgotten you, believe me. I'm gonna pass. I think, yeah, we'll just move on, I think, because everybody gets twitchy and that's my experience anyway, so I'll just move forward. So this is by Joyce Grenfell, which is entitled Death, and in parentheses, If I Should Go. If I should go before the rest of you, break not a flower nor inscribe a stone. Nor when I am gone speak in a Sunday voice, but be the usual selves that I have known. Weep if you must. Parting is hell, but life goes on, so sing as well. Okay, and now, yes, I have not forgotten, we will have, thank you, we will have the choral anthem, which will be most appropriate, which is a lovely hymn, Amazing Grace, written by a fellow who was a slaver and had a conversion experience, so it is said. thanks to our choir, to our violinists, and our choir leader. Talk about resurrection, we have a choir. So at this time, we will turn off our recording to allow the sharing of joys and concerns in the privacy of our sanctuary, things that are tender which should be shared amongst this loving community only and not beyond.